It's so bizarre to me how we are headed for such a physical crisis in oil and motor oil, also, lubrication oils, not just fuel oils. But we're being told everything's fine, and because of the paper marketplace, prices are kept artificially low. That situation just got a whole lot worse, and it begs the question, how long can they paper over the energy shock that's coming? Because the Houthis in Yemen just announced that they are shutting down the Bab el-Mandeb Strait for Saudi Arabia, or really that whole passageway through the Red Sea up to the Suez Canal there. You know how Saudi Arabia, because of the geography, Saudi Arabia, they have access to both the Persian Gulf side, and then on the southwest, they have access to the Red Sea. And what the Saudis have been doing because of the war is they've been piping about 6 million barrels per day through their own pipeline across Saudi Arabia to smaller ports located on the southwestern coastline where Saudi Arabia is adjacent to the Red Sea. So they've been able to get quite a lot of oil out that way. Again, about 6 million barrels per day is what I've read. That's substantial. That's about a third, almost a third of what used to sail through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, no more. Those 6 million barrels are toast from this point forward because of what the Houthis just announced. So it means that in addition to all the other shortages that our world is dealing with, now you can subtract 6 million barrels per day off of, the already dire situation where even analysts in the USA are saying that we have 43 days of oil remaining in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. 43 days at the current drawdown rate. And Trump just keeps saying, well, just draw it down, millions of barrels at a time. Just keep drawing it down. And it's going to run out at the current rate in 43 days. So where will that put us? What, about early September? Let's say early September. Yeah. Well before the midterms. And then what will happen to oil prices? Well, you can't paper over it forever, right? Eventually you need the molecules, and the molecules just aren't going to be there. So we're going to have a fuel spike, a price spike crisis in America that almost nobody sees coming. Almost no one gets this. And it's going to be catastrophic. You're going to see diesel at over $10 a gallon eventually. Not immediately, but, it's over $5 now. It'll go to 6, 7, 8. It'll just keep going. And I remember last year when I was telling everybody you need to store 500 gallons of diesel. And some people were laughing at me, trying to make fun of me. "Oh, storing diesel, that's so stupid. You can just go buy it." Yeah? Well, those people are in tears now because they're paying through the nose for diesel. See, the last time I bought diesel, I paid $2.50 a gallon. That's the diesel I'm using now. I'm still using $2.50 diesel because that's the power of obviously planning ahead, right? You plan ahead, life is easier. But almost all the other mainstream people are just thinking, well, it can't get that bad. Or you hear this go, they wouldn't let that happen. Who's they? And what do you mean they wouldn't let that happen? They are making it happen. In fact, the top interpretation of all of this is that this is on purpose. This is a global famine and an energy shortage that's being engineered on purpose in order to cause a civilizational reset. So to the people saying, well, they wouldn't let that happen, they are making sure it happens. They are controlling this. They are keeping the war going. They are making sure that there's not enough fertilizer to go around. They are making sure that we're not going to have enough diesel in a couple of months here. So yeah, there's going to be probably fuel rationing. Go figure, fuel rationing. And who do you think will get the fuel? Well, The Pentagon, of course, So they're going to save the diesel and the jet fuel for the military, and they're going to screw everybody else. So the airlines are going to take a massive hit in terms of their revenues. Now, I'm not giving you investment advice, but if I were investing in the stock market, I would be betting against the airlines. Big time. I would be betting against the AI companies right now at this point because the bubble is obviously crazy, but that's a different podcast. Nevertheless, fuel rationing is going to kick in at some level. And what that means is that food prices are going to skyrocket and everything that is, of course, transported with diesel, which is almost everything. And we are already at a point in this country where people can't afford to eat very often. They can't afford health insurance. They can't afford rent. Add unaffordable fuel to that mix and see what happens. We're approaching sort of a revolution era. People in the streets angry at the wealthy, corrupt elite, the technocratic elite, where just a tiny number of people are the billionaires who own everything, while the masses are impoverished and hungry. That leads to revolutions, folks. And that's where this is headed, I predict. And our political leaders in Washington, D.C. are just absolutely deaf and blind to the needs of the American people. Trump is totally disconnected from reality. He has no idea. He thinks inflation is going down, or that even grocery prices are going down. And he claims that we are in control of the Strait of Hormuz. He has claimed it dozens of times. Not once has that been accurate. He's been lying every single time. Still lying. We do not control the Strait of Hormuz. In fact, I think over the last few days, 4 ships were set on fire. That doesn't sound like we're in control. The strait is effectively closed. The only ships that make it through are those that are allowed to do so by Iran. So Iran is in control of the Strait of Hormuz, not the United States. The Pentagon is running out of munitions, according to mainstream media reports. More soldiers are being killed, but that's also on purpose because the Pentagon puts them out there as bait. Here, let's station you in Jordan or Kuwait, where you have no shelter, just like a barracks unit or a military office unit that's not at all bomb-proof. And just go there. Let's see how many get killed. And then, the Pentagon can call for an escalation of the war. How dare they kill our soldiers? Well, you put them there, you morons. If you don't want them to be killed, bring them home. They're not going to get killed in America, not by Iranian missiles. You put them out there in Kuwait, in Iraq, in Bahrain. I mean, of course they're going to get hit. That's what they're doing on purpose. The Pentagon is doing that on purpose. So bottom line, folks, get ready for the fuel shortages. It's going to get rather severe. And I'll be demonstrating some EV technology, solar charging of electric vehicles. And I finally have some of the math worked out. I'll be filming that soon, just a little pilot demo. So check it out. You can follow my videos at brightvideos.com and my articles at naturalnews.com. So thank you for listening. Take care. I just had an extraordinary interview with Michael Yon in studio and Matt Bracken joining remotely. So the three of us got to talk for almost an hour and a half about what's happening in the world and the risk of civilizational collapse. And Matt Bracken is absolutely correct when he says that you can't control how far the collapse goes. You might be thinking in your mind, well, let's just collapse back to the technology level of the 1870s, let's say. I'll have a horse and a water well and we'll grow our food off the land. The problem is you can't control that, because when you lose the core inputs of modern civilization, you might be thrust back to a much earlier era, such as pre-metallurgy. Who do you know that's a blacksmith? Who do you know that knows how to make tools out of iron or how to melt steel, or how to run a steel mill. I mean, there are people who know how to do those things. There's not very many. And even those who know how to do it are using the more modern automated methods of achieving that. And those methods may no longer function when you lose the energy infrastructure of our modern society. For example, that's just one example. So it's really important to understand that our society is much more fragile than what most people understand. And the typical person out there is thinking, this will get solved. Sure, there's a war right now in the Strait of Hormuz, which they never heard of before. Yeah, it might be restricted for a while, but they'll solve it. The things will get back to normal. And the point of what Matt is saying, and Michael Jan also, is that sometimes you don't go back to normal. Sometimes the collapse is so catastrophic that there's nothing left to depend on that you're familiar with. And this is one of the reasons why I have forced myself for years on my own ranch to learn the skills of how to do things when I could hire somebody. I could hire somebody to run the irrigation lines, or I could hire somebody to install water pumps, or I could hire somebody to swap electrical outlets or whatever. Or even in my project at the studio with solar panels, I could have hired, some outside person to come in, like set up the solar thing, but I wouldn't learn anything from that. And it's critical that I learn how to do these things. So I'm doing it myself. I'm learning how to set up solar panels and how to put on, MC4 connectors and how to run lines through conduit, how to set up inverters, how to set up battery storage systems. All of this, I'm making myself do it with no outside help. The only help I allow myself to have is that I can ask AI how to do things. And that is very helpful, by the way. And that's why I think one of your survival assets needs to be a local AI agent that can work, that can help you answer a bunch of questions when you're trying to run your life off grid because maybe systems have collapsed out there. But I don't bring in outside experts except as a last resort. If it's something that's just, too special, I don't have enough, whatever, I don't have enough knowledge, then yeah, I'll bring in an expert. Now, unfortunately, the vast majority of people have no idea what's coming, even though the event itself has already happened. So the event is the lack of ships going through the Strait of Hormuz. That event began February 28th of this year, and it continues to this day. And the longer it goes on, the worse it's going to be, obviously. But the thing is, you don't feel the effects right away, right? Matt likes to talk about how it's like that tsunami in the Indian Ocean where there was an earthquake offshore. This is many years ago. And then the water got sucked away from the shore. All this water vanished from the beaches, and a lot of people walking around the beaches like, wow, where'd the water go, While the wise people were just screaming to get to high ground because they knew that a tsunami is coming. That's where the water went. The water went out to join a massive wave that's incoming because, that's how waves work. They will pull water in first, even they'll pull water from the direction that they are moving. And once you see that happen, you can project where things are headed. A massive tidal wave is coming. You may not know the intensity of it, but something big is coming. You could take a guess from how much water was just emptied out of the beach in front of you, It's like, well, that water's going somewhere. There's a lot of energy going somewhere. So that might be a warning. But most people don't heed the warnings. Most people simply do not even recognize the sign of what happened. And so they are not at all prepared for the tidal wave when it comes. Now, the tidal wave that's coming is clearly going to be, brutal in terms of the The scarcity of energy, the scarcity of food and fertilizer, etc. This is now already well known. But again, very few people are considering this in their computation of how to live the next couple of years of their lives. And the critical pivot point on all of this to understand is that we have to get out of the mindset of thinking, well, if something goes wrong with the food supply, I can just go to the grocery store and get more food. Or if I run out of parts for the plumbing, I can just go to Home Depot and get those parts. What we are talking about, Matt Bracken and Michael Yon and myself, is when there's a civilizational collapse that collapses below the availability of those things, to where you don't have a Home Depot, you don't have a municipal water supply, you don't have a functioning power grid, you don't have food deliveries at the grocery stores. And one of the things that Matt Bracken said, one of the early signs of things going wrong, he said, would be when large grocery stores start getting looted in the major cities. And he thinks that could happen pretty quickly. I think that he's absolutely correct. And I think it really won't take much when you start seeing entire stores looted. So I want you to mark that in your own mind as a critical marker. If you start seeing the wholesale looting of Walmarts or grocery stores or whatever, especially in blue cities, that's where it's probably going to start. But the minute you see that, I want you to remind yourself that this is the sign that is an indicator that things are collapsing rapidly. And of course, at that moment, you don't want to be out there in that. You don't want to be competing for food in a grocery store with a lot of desperate people around you. You want to have already nailed that down well ahead of time, obviously, because the riskiest thing that you could do is participate in, a desperate mob that's trying to get the last scraps of food, off a grocery store shelf or what have you. That's the last place you want to be. So make a decision in advance to not be there, and that will serve you very well. Then there's the other important element here, which is that a certain number of people may die from famine. I've put that number at about 400 million people at risk around the world, or roughly about 5% of the population. However, it doesn't mean that the mass death would be limited to just those 400 million people. What Matt pointed out is that at a certain point, when you lose the ability to keep people fed, then you begin to suffer a societal collapse. You can suffer a collapse of a local government, collapse of a bureaucracy, collapse of food distribution systems, or even a collapse of the ability to keep the coolant pumps running in a nuclear power plant, let's say. And as these cascading collapse elements begin to add up, things get much, much worse layered on top of each other. So the fact that 400 million people could starve to death doesn't mean that the number of total deaths is limited to 400 million people. In other words, it could go to what others are warning could be billions of people. If you start losing the core infrastructure of civilization, then you could lose billions of people. And one of the scenarios that we are all concerned about is that the GCC nations, that's all the Persian Gulf nations, Bahrain and UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, etc., they may become uninhabitable. And it's not difficult to imagine why or how they could become uninhabitable, because the desalination plants are blown up, or there's radiation fallout from nuclear strikes, or from some other reason, although those are the two most likely reasons. If that happens, then we're never going back to the abundance of energy and fertilizer and gas that we used to have in January of this year. We're never going back to that. Probably not in our lifetimes. And certainly not within a year or whatever. So as Trump is telling you that we've won the war, the truth is we've lost. Humanity has lost a tremendously important infrastructure pipeline that has kept nations intact and has kept people alive as that infrastructure has been constructed for decades. And as that infrastructure is lost, then it's just cause and effect that you're going to lose the people who were supported by it, or you're going to lose the nations that were held together by that. And when you add to that the obvious conclusion that the U.S. is done in the region, that the United States of America will not be running military bases in the Middle East any longer because they're done, right? They're destroyed. And the U.S. isn't going to be able to return to that region anytime soon. Then you realize that the whole world can be reconfigured. The whole power dynamic will be reconfigured. Routes and resources, energy flows, fertilizer for global agriculture, etc. As all of that is being reconfigured, what Matt Bracken says is going to be a torturous fall and a reconfiguration before the human race reaches a new kind of homeostasis or a balance with the available resources. During that time, he's very concerned, and so is Michael Yon, that you're going to see widespread cannibalism. You're going to see people eating each other, large groups of humans eating other groups of humans. And you're going to see a warlord era, probably, where the strong men with a gang are able to raid and to pillage and take the resources that they need to remain very strong. Resources like ammunition, let's say, or food, or what have you. So all of these scenarios could be coming. We could be thrust into a very rapid Mad Max level collapse pretty quickly because the world depends so much on one small choke point. And that choke point is the Strait of Hormuz, or in a larger scale, the region of the Persian Gulf. If that goes up in smoke or goes down because of nuclear attacks, nuclear war exchange, etc., then all bets are off. And the world will lose a large number of human beings. Whether that number is hundreds of millions or a few billion, who knows? There's a lot that can happen between now and then. But it's not going to be a tiny number. It's going to be an unthinkable number. For most people, they wouldn't even fathom this. But we're very close to seeing that happen. And if Trump continues to pursue this war, that's where it's going. He's going to crash the world. He's going to crash human civilization to avoid having his ego damaged by taking a loss. He would rather the whole world suffer and die than for he to take a loss. So that's where we are in the world, in reality. Now, I encourage you to listen to my interview with Matt Bracken and Michael Yon. It'll be posted probably by the time you hear this. There are lots of things you can do to get prepared. Obviously, we talk about these. Of course, if you want storable food, check out my online store, healthrangerstore.com. If you want backup communications, satellite phones, etc., check out our sponsor, the Satellite Phone Store. SAT123.com is their website. If you want my recommendations on other areas of preparedness, I've put together rangerdeals.com. Those are our affiliate deals with de-Googled phones, with the custom Glock manufacturers, Shield Arms, for example, and really good holsters that work amazingly well, that are just the best holsters in the world. Check that out there. Plus gold and silver providers and goldbacks and therapeutic peptide providers, etc. Those are the companies that I've checked out that I recommend. And I've recently added another power station company to that list because I've been using their power stations, and so far it's going very well. So check that out. Stay informed, stay prepared. I'll do my best to keep you posted on everything as this all unfolds, which is going to be very crazy. But you can follow my work at brightvideos.com and also naturalnews.com. You can also follow me on social media. On X, I'm known as Health Ranger. On Telegram, I'm Real Health Ranger. And on brighteon.social, I'm Health Ranger. So check out my accounts there, and I'll do my best to keep you informed. So thank you for listening. Take care.
I think that the average person will actually never know actually what happened.
Really?
I think that, they'll know that maybe that they're dying and that the country's destroyed, but they won't understand actually what happened. And
some of these people, as they're dying, they will say, trust the plan. You know, they will never know how foolish, how gullible they've been this entire time.
They won't know. There's still jab pushers out there.
I think that getting away from big cities is important. And I obviously having food supplies, water supplies, super critical. I know people that have 10 fantastic guns and body armor and night vision, but they're on city water and they don't know where it comes from. I think so you don't know if you got to get up to 9,000 feet to survive or 5,000 feet, but don't be at sea level.
Welcome to today's interview here on brightvideos.com. I've got a really special show for you today. As you can see in studio, we have Michael Yon. Welcome, Michael. Great to see you here.
Thanks for having me in. This studio is absolutely awesome, as I was just saying. It globes everywhere and just inspiring.
Maps on the wall. Yeah, it's your kind of studio.
It is.
And then we also have joining us, we have Matt Bracken. Welcome, Matthew. It's an honor to have you on.
It's been a long time, and I can't remember the last time I was on with both of you, so this will be truly epic.
Yeah, I know. Really I'm not sure this has ever happened before, but we've got us all here together. We've got, 3 or 4 globes, so we can probably figure a few things out. So let's start, Matt, with your recent meme that you published where you had put together the graphics of how this is an energy war. That went very viral on social media, and I think you're absolutely correct about it. Can you explain your thinking about what the dynamic is right now, especially as the Houthis have just announced interdiction of the Saudi exports through the Red Sea region there? Talk to us about your view of where we are.
Yeah, I'm calling it World War E. And it's for World War energy.
Yeah.
And Brandon Weichert, he came back and said World War E is World War Epstein. So I can't really disagree with that either. So you can take your pick. But since we've been supplying, NATO, America, Britain, Germany, we've been supplying deep strike weapons to Ukraine and virtually using Ukraine as a launching point. Sort of like a technicality, like a cutout, like as long as a rocket comes out of Ukraine, don't blame NATO. We made the missile and we sent it to Ukraine, but the Ukrainians fired it. So there have been strikes near to Lake Baikal that wouldn't fit on my map, and all the way up to Murmansk, above the Arctic Circle, believe it or not. And at the other front, the Iran-Israel USA war has gone all the way down to the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, which is translates to the Gate of Tears, which, as Michael Yon can tell you, we're the same. We're just not the same. We're different bears. The new generation of bears fighting over the same old streams and caves, right? So the Bab al-Mandeb has been named the Gate of Tears for like a 1,000 years, probably before that. It's like a Cape Hatteras. So it's always been a critical choke point. Forever. And the Strait of Hormuz, again, critical choke point. When they talk about Keshem Island, on Keshem Island are like the Portuguese fort. The Portuguese in the 1600s occupied Keshem Island. It was always critical territory. So if this war stretches from the Arctic Circle down to the bottom of Yemen, at the bottom of the Red Sea, what's separating them is almost nothing, because the Ukrainians have hit a Russian naval base on the Caspian Sea the Russian part of the Caspian Sea, and Israel and America have hit Iranian targets on the Caspian Sea, like their ports, and also the city of Tabriz that's in that little salient, that little shoulder that pokes up to the northwest. We just hit Tabriz again like last night. And in the news today, Iranians are saying that they shot down drones, attack drones, coming out of eastern Azerbaijan.
Whoa.
So Azerbaijan was in its own war, 3 or 4 years ago against the Armenian enclave Nagorno-Karabakh. So it's like disputed territory. So in that war, you had Israel and Turkey supporting Azerbaijan and Russia supporting Armenia, like supplying weapons and intelligence. So it's hard to see, like, where is there a gap now between these wars? Because America is providing the satellite reconnaissance and other intelligence information, targeting information to Ukraine. We have British and American intelligence planes that are like flying the coasts of Russia, like from north to south along the Baltics, down across Eastern Europe, and then across the Black Sea. Those are providing the targeting information, for the Ukrainians that are firing our weapons. And then in the Iran USA war, Russia and China are providing the same information. So as soon as a C-17 lands anywhere in the Gulf states, and they roll out these containerized, and vehicle-borne missile systems, the Iranians know it a minute later. So the Iranians have actually been able to hit HIMARS systems while they're being set up in Kuwait, and they haven't even fired. So both superpowers, or all the superpowers, are providing the critical part, the intelligence part, to all sides on this war. I don't see how you can separate this out as two different wars anymore. This is one continuous war.
Okay, Matt, one other thing that's happening that underscores exactly what you just said there, or reinforces it, is the fact that the Ukrainian drones, which are really NATO drones launched by Ukraine, are taking out Russia's oil refining capability on a large scale. And so that's causing more of a global shortage of the refined fuels from oil, forcing Russia to have to import diesel. At the same time that now what the Houthis just announced with the Bab el-Mandeb is going to deprive, I think, the world of maybe up to about 6 million barrels per day that the Saudis were managing to move through that pipeline, to the southwest there. So
the Yanbu pipeline.
That's it. So we're seeing millions of barrels taken off the global supply of the commodity, and then many millions of barrel equivalent of finished products, including jet fuel and diesel, taken off of the international trade stage. And so Matt, what are your final thoughts on that? And then I'm going to go to Michael about
I just saw your post this morning where you retweeted. I never even heard of this other energy expert who is talking about 2 billion humans will not be able to be fed.
Oh, Professor Steve Keen, yeah.
Right, and it's a case of GMTA because you guys weren't collaborating.
No, I've never spoken to him.
You came to this independently, right?
Yeah.
And he probably never read or saw your work.
Right.
So we're gearing up. We're gearing up for and I think that at this point, Trump is just like a puppet. He doesn't know what's going on. He's being manipulated. He's a stooge, a low-grade actor at this point.
Well, Michael, I think you would agree with that.
Yeah, I just call him orange fungus these days. Yeah. I mean, he's not in charge of anything. That post by, is it Professor Stephen King?
Yeah, Steve Keen.
Steve Keen.
K-E-N.
I read it. I mean, it was like word for word the things that you publish. I mean, it was, and I commented on it as well. It's like word for word.
Yeah, and I'm not accusing him of
No, I'm not saying that either.
No,
but it's worth.
We arrived at the same conclusion completely independently.
Yeah, that's important.
Right.
That's very important because other people are seeing it from their vantage points.
Right.
Matthew, by the way, does these maps. I know you're aware of them because you retweet them sometimes.
Yeah.
But they should be called just like Bracken maps or something.
Yeah, Bracken maps. There you go.
Because,
like
at
it.
first I was like, wow, that's a very intelligent map that Matt Bracken. But these are from going back years now. And then over time, I'm like, you just pump these out regularly. And there should be a whole book of your maps that you make.
Well, people,
Bracken maps.
So many people don't read. I mean, there are most houses, if you walk into most houses, there's not a book, right? In the whole house.
Can you imagine that?
And
would be
even
like
if they're
torture.
watching television, they're not watching television. People have cut the cord. So they're click, 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 and they're getting just sound bites. So people are underneath of a Niagara of information, but it's bullshit. It's like standing under a sewer pipe, right? And thinking that that's your view of the world. So I consider these I call them map memes. My daughter, who's I guess a Zoomer, she's like, Dad, that's too wordy, and it's like this is not for the word meme audience. This is a map meme. It's an information meme.
Yeah.
It's for people that ordinarily would have read a book or at least read a few chapters or something, but at least they can absorb this information because it adds the visual element. I mean, most Americans, they can't tell you, because you can see this when they do these interviews on the street. They can't tell you who fought in the Revolutionary War or what century the Civil War happened in.
Or
who
what
fought
continent they are currently living on.
But they get to vote. But they can vote. So they're so easily brainwashed. Who is the latest Hitler? Hitler. We've been at war with Iran for 47 years. They want to get a nuclear weapon so they can destroy the world. We have to stop these madmen. That's the message that is like the torrent that Americans get. So Michael and I were talking today about just the extent of the brainwashing and whether it's even possible to push back against it, or if we just have to treat the brainwashing like a monolith, like a boulder in a river we got to steer around. Because, and Michael was just with Mr. Griffith, what's his name?
G. Edward Griffin. Yeah, the author of Creature from Jekyll Island.
Yeah.
Who did that? Well, who is probably more famous in the internet era for his Yuri Bezmenov interviews.
Yeah,
he was so prescient 30 years ago to interview the Russian spy Yuri Bezmenov, who has those just epic, just seminal videos on brainwashing. Once people are brainwashed, it's very hard to fix them, to fix their brain.
And remember, one of those steps from Bezmenov is the demoralization of the culture.
Yes.
And that's exactly what we're seeing.
That's right, demoralization.
Demoralization, which actually means two things: your loss of drive, but also the loss of morals.
Right.
That's what's happening in America.
What do they call that with the rat experiment, where they just shock the rats randomly? It's called helplessness.
Learned helplessness, isn't it?
Learned helplessness. Just I can't do anything about it, so just go to work, give up, go smile at the flock camera, take your vaccine.
Yep, that's where it's going. Okay.
I just had about 5 breakfast, lunches, and dinners with Mr. Griffin and his wife.
Did you?
Yeah, because he asked me to speak at Red Pill.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I flew back to America.
That makes sense.
Because I'd promised last year, and he's 94, and he is a national treasure. He's unbelievable.
Absolutely.
So, but I wish he were here right now. I mean, I wish he were one of our guest, your guest. but I mean, I wish he were at the table. He's brilliant, but he talks about this all the time.
Yes.
The brainwashing aspect is vital.
Yeah. Now, but let me pivot and ask you a question, Michael, because in previous interviews, you've talked about how there's an engineering of global famine. And with the map, the Bracken map, we're going to call it, that Matt just put out, there's clearly an engineering of energy scarcity that is separate but overlap, like like a Venn diagram, the two circles overlap. Energy and food are, slightly interchangeable, right? But
they're functions. They're functions of one another.
Right, exactly.
And you can add the helium, sulfur. It's a function of energy.
Yes. Polyethylene coming out of there, aluminum smelting, all these things are critical. But Michael, my question to you is, how much do you think that the energy scarcity is also being engineered on purpose to create a massive crisis in the West?
Oh, like stunningly obvious. When like Nord Stream, as you know, I've said many times that Misako and I went to Germany in advance to BASF, which you've talked about many times.
Yes.
And we went there. The last time we were there, we went there twice to BASF because we thought Nord Stream was going to get attacked. And I had bought an extra iPad that I just watched the cubic meters per second. There was a website where you could see how many cubic meters per second of natural gas were flowing through Nord Stream pipelines. And at some point they went to zero. And I said, Misako, look, it's gone to zero. And anyway, the rest is history. And now a lot of people thought, well, that was an attack on Russia. I said, okay, it looks like that. It looks like that, but that's not, and it is partly, but that doesn't fit the broader fact pattern. The broader fact pattern includes Groningen gas field. That's not an attack on Russia. And that's the biggest gas field in Europe, in Netherlands. And we were also warning about that. And then Groningen got shut off, right? And then I published well in advance that I thought Zionists would close Strait of Hormuz and blame Iran. I published that in July in very clear words of 2025.
You called it. You also said that Germany's industrial base would be gutted by the loss of cheap Russian gas, which is exactly what has happened.
Right.
It impacts even to the west of Germany. I mean, most of Western Europe is in dire straits now.
Right, and they're taking out the farmers all the time. Like, Solari report, Catherine Austin Fitz, she talks about this. Her staff is unbelievable, that the level of research they do, but they've been researching farmers around Europe and specifically Netherlands and Germany quite a lot, but other places as well. And, they're taking them out here. Well, in Canada, when I came down from Las Vegas from Red Pill Expo a few days ago, I went to the Las Vegas airport, and a lady sat beside me, and she went, oh, as she sat down, and I said, you okay? And her rib was broken. She said, she's a cattle rancher in Texas, and one of her cattle, I guess, last week or so smashed her rib, going through the chute or whatever. Anyway, we talked for a while, so I had this captive audience of a rancher. I was like, thank you, God, for putting a Texas rancher beside me. You know what I mean? And so I asked her if she heard of screwworms, and she had, because she said every 48 hours they're told that they have to check all their livestock. They have to check her horses or cattle, and she said it's wearing them out. Wow. And I asked her what she knew about, she had the good sense that ranchers and farmers and fishermen have, you know what I mean? So we could talk instantly at a good level, but she didn't really know the battle behind the screwworm. She didn't realize that. And I said, what they're really trying to do, the government's not here to help. Because if she finds a screwworm, they have a number that they're supposed to call. And the government will come out and help you out. And I'm like, if I were you, I would think through before I dialed those numbers.
Yeah. Kill your cattle.
Right, yeah. And, they're going to say that the screwworms, the flies are, they're in the eggs are in the soil and all that stuff.
Yep.
And they're going to take your stuff. And keep in mind, they're not checking the wild deer at the deer feeder for screwworms. They're not checking all the raccoons and all those things out there. So it's not like your cattle are going to be the only... the screwworms are in Panama. Matt was down in Panama with us at Darien Gap. Those signs were, those COPEG signs, which is the people that fight the screwworms, those signs are all over the place, right? And in 2021, Misako and I emailed to the COPEG people in Panama asking to tour their facilities. COPEG is the people that fight the screwworms in Panama to keep them from getting to the United States. But in any case, they wouldn't let us tour their facility. And so, since that time, I've been saying I thought that we would. Now, keep in mind, what I'm really talking about is the larger fact pattern. The larger fact pattern of Strait of Hormuz, the Nord Stream, Groningen, screwworms, knocking farmers off of their farms all over the place. You got bears running all over the place in Japan now, killing people because the farmers
human flood across the Darien Gap.
That's right.
Just coincidentally with the screwworm.
Your point about the screwworms is this is an allowed invasion of the U.S. meat supply.
Right.
Correct?
To take them off their farms. Think about all these ranches around here, which are all around us, that they're going to take their land. They're going to knock, and our protein supply.
Right. Okay. So let me ask Matt, then what's the end game of this? The artificial scarcity that's being enforced on energy that we just talked about, plus what Michael's talking about, the engineered famine, and of course the loss of fertilizer, how that plays into all of this. What geopolitically does the West, maybe the people who run Trump, what is it that they hope to accomplish from this? Is it just total emergency and lockdowns and martial law, or where's this going?
I like to use that little Illuminati pyramid that's on their dollar bills. That little pyramid with the eye on the top. I think that it's a good way of visualizing at different levels as you climb up that pyramid. There are people that think, there are people 2/3 the way up the pyramid that think, I'm doing this to save the planet from global warming, right? And they're sincere, okay? And as you climb further and further up that pyramid, you'll get to the 100 billionaire oligarch class, and then just people that want to see everything burn because they're basically Luciferians, and they hate civilization, they hate Western culture. They don't really have an idea for something better. We've tried communism, we've tried lots of isms, and they always ended up in mass death and tears. But that doesn't cause them to go back to church and get on their knees and say, I should repent. No, they still want to see everything burn because they hate what's beautiful. That's what they promote. They promote this brutalist architecture. They promote, the really nasty films and television that are, promoting things like transgenderism to children. It started with the whole LGBTQ thing 30, 40 years ago. Now it's, trying to get right to the children. When there's a conservative that's often on Fox News. Him and his husband have purchased a new baby infant from a surrogate mother, and it's like, wow. Oh, blessed day! 2 men in the hospital with their baby girl to go along with their baby boy that they have literally bought human beings in America. So obviously, this ends up in a cul-de-sac, right? This ends in a human cul-de-sac. But at the top of this pyramid, because you go up, it's like people just are saying, there's too many billionaires. Why don't I have more money? The Bernie Sanders level. And as you go up, you have a higher and higher dedication. I'm a dedicated communist. I can't say it. I'm willing to have a 20% gulag kill off if that's what it takes. But when you get right to the top, I think they want to see civilization burn down. I think it's a very Luciferian kind of a goal or an impetus. Well,
they're certainly going in that direction. I mean, we're looking at a civilizational reset on this current trajectory.
Well, if just doing the math, when you're talking about possibly 2 billion dying, or Victor Boot was on with Alex Jones today, and they're talking about if there is this, and Brandon Weichert is also saying Trump may be talked into doing a small tactical nuke against this quote-unquote pickaxe mountain.
Oh, boy.
And how rapidly that could devolve into a nuclear exchange. And once there's a nuclear exchange, there's 480 large nuclear reactors, mostly in the Northern Hemisphere, that without being tended, they'll all go Chernobyl, in the next year or two. And the planet can rapidly become unlivable. So I mean, 2 billion from famine, it's hard to see how, it's 2 billion from famine because of the current World War E, but, we'll hold it at 2 billion to famine, and then we'll somehow recover. I always use this elevator analogy. If you're at the 100th floor in the elevator and it breaks, you're not going to stop at the 90th floor. You're not going to say, 2 billion, but we're good now. You're probably going to crash all the way through the floor to the absolute warlord, most basic, probably cannibal level until, hopefully whatever happens doesn't involve radiation. But if there's a total global depression, it's hard to avoid radiation because all of these hundreds of nuclear reactors, they were built on the assumption, and like the normalcy bias is designed into the architecture of these nuclear reactors. There'll always be engineers. There'll always
and
be
the power
people
grid
that
will
can
always
repair
run
these
the cooling
things.
pumps. Yeah.
Yeah, there'll always be. That don't worry. But if they're not, these things melt down.
But Matt, let me mention. So, I did a lot of research. Professor Steve Keen is saying that 2 billion people might die. I have a little more conservative numbers based on the actual percentage of fertilizer that comes out of the Persian Gulf compared to the world. My number is 400 million, which is about 5% of the world population. But if you add in the economic collapse and the institutional collapse, that's where obviously that number can get much larger. But Michael, Matt just talked about the risk of nuclear war. You and I, well, all three of us know that if any nuke goes off anywhere in the world, including the U.S. dropping one on Pickaxe Mountain, then from that day forward, every food crop that's harvested will be known as post-nuclear food. And all the food that existed before that will be pre-nuclear food. Like, which kind of food do you want to eat? I mean, how's that going to figure into the famine when radiation and radioisotopes start raining down, settling out of the atmosphere and dropping cesium-137 on people's farms?
Right, just like steel today. They still use steel from old ships that are pre-nuclear time for some of the machines that they build, right? Because they don't have the... it's a you know what I'm talking about, right? Anyway, there was a pre-nuclear period where, a lot of the metals that are made today, they have, the nuclear materials, they're radiating right now. They have a half-life.
Low-level background radiation that's higher,
which can affect some instruments that are made, and for some instruments require metals that were made or mined before the that's something I don't have enough knowledge to talk about much, but it's quite interesting how some of the old ships that were made before the nuclear period that are at the bottom of the sea, that their metals are very valuable.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah, pre-1945, right? Roughly. But when it comes to food, then, you've talked a lot about engineered famine, so has Matt and myself. But imagine a post-nuclear world where the vast majority of populations are required to eat food that is radioactive at some level because that's all they can afford.
I think it's coming. And I think, one thing that I mention often, these oligarchical systems that are fighting, the two biggest systems are Zionist. They're not actually huge, but they're in powerful positions, and Chinese Communist Party. And it's clear that the Zionists will try to put China into famine. And if I were going to put China into famine, I would first of all do exactly what they're doing now, and I would close Malacca, and I would either close the Bab el-Mandeb myself or get somebody else to do it, like the Houthis. I would close the Black Sea, like they're doing now, blowing up the ships and whatnot. And I would also I would cause a war between Argentina and Brazil, and I would take control of Panama Canal. Right, I would do a few things like that. Close Malacca and a few other waterways out there.
You might also see some mysterious earthquake that takes out the Three Gorges in the Yangtze River.
Three Gorges Dam would be an obvious target, and I'm curious if they're going to have some way to take that out, right at flood stage, because Three Gorges Dam, somehow taking that out with plausible deniability, because if you take it out overtly, you're probably going to get nuked. If I were China and you took out Three Gorges Dam, it would be game on. I would launch everything I got, because I know that you're coming to wipe us all out at that point. And so, that's probably how they look at it. It's not what you would want to do, but if you're going to kill us all, then we're gonna go down in a big firefight.
Right. So Matt, then how quickly can things escalate if Trump is crazy enough to use a tactical nuke to try to get after that mountain, Pickaxe Mountain, as it's called? And by the way, that whole story seems like complete bullshit, because last summer we were told that all the nuclear dust was already destroyed in this the Fordow Mountain. Now, did it magically move to the Pickaxe Mountain? Like
the level of propaganda that we're subjected to in the West and in the USA. I probably watch a half hour of Fox News a day if I'm passing by a room with a TV in it and it's like top of the hour, I'll click it on to see like, what are the crazy boomer generals talking about? Karg Island, we've got to finish the job, right? So this is what Trump is hearing. I just hope that there are serious flag rank and senior officers that would not necessarily refuse to follow orders, but would want a video conference and written orders. Something that for history because if it goes bad, they'll always sell out the general. He went rogue. We didn't specifically tell him to do that. The guys that put these warheads on a B-2 in Kansas, and then it winds up at Pickaxe Mountain, they've got to all know that they're doing it on record for the history books. There's no secret. There's almost no secrets now. They've been lying to us about casualties, obviously, from this war, because there's so many people that are contractors or they're nationals. They're not Americans, so they don't get counted with the casualties. But you can't do that anymore because there are apps now that like just see heat signatures on the planet and go, wow, that just suddenly in that camp in Erbil, there's a big heat signature. And then you've got a cab driver that's just taking pictures on his phone. It's on the internet. Wow, look, there's 50 KC-135 tankers that just parked in this base in Jordan. It's like, you can't keep that secret.
Right.
And so the speed that all this is happening, I'm just hopeful that at some point there will be a cutout function where somebody says, no, sir, I'm not going into the Little Bighorn. I'm not charging into the Little Bighorn. I'm just not going to do it. Or you're going to have to be on the record as ordering me to do it.
Well, I suspect that's already happened at some level, and that's why some higher level officials have been fired.
And that's why some of the ships are not getting as, we used to have, remember when the Vincennes shot down the Iranian Airbus, mistaken identity, snafu, over, who was, and it was like so mundane. It was like, well, we weren't on that frequency. They're squawking everything civilian, but we're on a Navy ship. So we didn't hear the Navy, the military emergency signal. So they shoot down, the Vincennes shoots down an Airbus full of Iranians. They haven't forgotten that. But that was inside the Persian Gulf. Since before February 28th, there's no U.S. Navy inside the Persian Gulf.
Right.
When we did Desert Storm, we had ships going into Jubail and other ports in Saudi Arabia every day for months and months, unloading tanks and artillery shells and everything else, just piling up square kilometers of logistics. We're not even in the Persian Gulf anymore. And they've tried to send a few destroyers through, mainly like during the best periods of ceasefires when we're negotiating. They'll send a Burke-class zoom in and out. They're trying to tell tankers, take this Omani channel. We'll have air cover. Okay, where's the destroyer? Well, we can't actually send a destroyer there. It's too dangerous. But we want your big, fat, slow tanker to drive through there, and we'll be able to shoot down anything coming at you. So the whole world is seeing that we're just being fed BS. I saw an Iranian video. This was during like this is back in March when the big shooting was going on. And at the same time that we're being told, we have destroyed 90% of their missile capacity. Remember that 90%, we've destroyed it. And there's a video that comes out, and this is a great thing about X, because there are Iranians posting on X. And it shows a guy, IRGC guy, young guy, he is literally on a skateboard with his smartphone out on a selfie stick. And he's coasting down a nice asphalt mountain road. And in the background, one of these big Karamashar missiles is erecting on a truck, okay? Soldiers all over the place watching it, taking pictures. And it blasts off, and he's coasting by it on a skateboard, all right? So that's what the Iranians are seeing of the war. We're not worried about America. We're launching missiles at will. We're being told we're just hunting down the last of them. We keep hearing 90% have been destroyed, but then they keep launching missiles. So obviously we're being lied to on this side.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Michael, the level of propaganda, though, is so off the charts. I mean, Trump keeps telling us that we have control over the strait every day. We're told that, it seems, and clearly that's not true. We're told that we've defeated Iran completely 40-something times. And then the next day, well, and now that they killed some of our service members in Jordan. Well, I thought we defeated them. The level of BS is off the charts. Why aren't more leaders in the media calling BS on this?
Oh, because they're all captured. I mean, but the Zionists want the Strait of Hormuz closed. That's why I published that in July of 2025, that they would likely close it and blame Iran. And that's what's happened, right? Because they want it closed. I think we're going to end up seeing, this is a guess, obviously, I think we'll end up seeing the desalination plants taken out because the Greater Israel Project, which I think
a couple in Kuwait are already gone.
Yeah, they've been nailing those. That would be the end of Kuwait. That takes out their electrical grid as well, right? And so,
does it?
Yeah, it affects their electrical grid directly, actually.
Really?
And but if you take out those, as you know, I think the people that watch your program will know that if you take out those desalination plants, it's a game over for a lot of those countries.
You can't live there anymore.
All the Gulf countries.
You can't live. You just have to leave, period.
Oh, let me say something
water,
about
right?
And how can they leave? There aren't enough airplanes to take out millions of people.
Yeah, that's what I was asking you about recently, Matthew. Do you think how many can you get out of there before they just die in their beef jerky over there? I mean, how? I mean, you can't get the water into them. There's no chance. As soon as their swimming pools are empty, and that's it. It's game over. They're going to die.
I don't have an answer to that, Matt. I mean, you can't evacuate the whole region of all the tens of millions.
Especially not in a war. Not in wartime. What is Egypt going to send 10,000 buses to Bahrain?
And not a chance.
Yeah,
and you can't sail them out of there because the strait's closed. You can't fly them out of there because of the airports.
I think it's going to happen. That's my guess. And because that's what makes sense in the larger picture. And if you want to depopulate planet Earth, you're going to take out those desal plants.
Well, Joe Kent was just on with someone. Maybe it was Tucker. I forgot. Joe Kent was just saying he's warning there's going to be a mass casualty event. Matt, what do you think he might be referring to?
Well, the most obvious thing would be a ship. And I think that he has knowledge because he's been speaking about a missile hitting, one of the big missiles hitting the ship. And what's really super important, we've all grown up with the concept of CEP, circular error probability. I think it's what percentage of missiles the warhead will hit within a certain boundary. And during the London Blitz of V2, if it had a CEP of a mile, it just meant it's randomly hitting London. So don't worry about it because your block might get blown up, but they can't hit the munition plant. Now they can hit the munition plant with one shot, right? So it changes everything. And if it gets down to the desal plants, then the Gulf is done. But in terms of depopulation, obviously, if the whole GCC is wiped out, that's big for the depopulationist aspect of this. But in terms of the arc of empire, this is absolutely the end of the American empire. 780 bases around the world. That's over because the deal was you have our bases in Kuwait, Bahrain, etc., and we'll protect you. And instead of protection, you became a target because the Emiratis, they can't say no to Uncle Sam. There was a period, I think it was Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. This was towards the end of the 40 days when they said you can't use our airspace. There was like a pause in the bombing, like what? Saudi Arabia and Kuwait said can't use our airspace. Well, that was settled out. Obviously, they put the thumb screws to some of their shot callers, paid them more bribes, more blackmail, because we're still launching HIMARS from Kuwait. So, and then they're being hit. If you are a co-belligerent, you can't say I'm a neutral country. Even if not all, but the vast majority of the people in the Gulf states don't want to be an ally of America anymore. It's like, forget it. It's just bringing missiles to us. And if they hit our desal plants or our power stations, because the two are together, a desal plant requires a huge amount of energy to pump water across reverse osmosis filters, gigantic RO filters. It's the same principle from small to large. It's scalable. But you need a lot of pressure to push all that salt water through a filter. Without the energy, the grid, the desal plant doesn't work. Or if you hit the desal plant, those people will perish. And the message to the world is, America can't protect you. A base in your country is actually a poison pill. 100 years ago, we had British and American ships almost 1,000 miles up the Yangtze River. There's a great film, The Sand Pebbles, from the 60s with Steve. Great film. But we were controlling China, sailing naval vessels right up the Yangtze River. Now, 100 years later, we're out of the Persian Gulf. We have to stay hundreds of miles away from Iran so our ships won't be targeted. And I think what Joe Kent was mentioning, and I have not seen any proof of this, not only are these hypersonic weapons very accurate, like they can hit the exact barracks they're aiming at, they're in Jordan, but they're steerable. And you can look at steerable in two different ways. Are they steerable to evade Patriots and SM-3s and THAADs in that they'll jink on the way down? That's one version of steerable. We're still aiming at the aiming point we were set up to hit, but we're going to do a few jinks on the way down. But there's another steerable, which is terminal guidance steerable. So the aircraft carrier or the amphibious ship or the destroyer is moving at 15 or 18 knots in a certain direction. That's not a real tough calculation if the warhead is steerable to a new point where they can do the math on the way down to give it lead, just like you're shooting a bird. It's like, okay, in 30 seconds, the destroyer is going to be out 200 yards. So yeah, and if Joe Kent is hinting that they could do that if they wanted, that they've been holding fire, they don't want to give us the mass casualty event.
Right. But recent reports
they could
in the media have just said that the U.S. interceptors are having a lot of difficulty dealing with the jig-jag of the incoming Iranian missiles, because they're not just on a simple ballistic trajectory that can be easily.
Plus, they have the big one, the Karamshar. I can't pronounce it, but it's a 2,000 kilometer plus missile, which means it can hit Israel from almost anywhere in Iran. So it's not like you can just focus on launchers that are in western Iran. From deep in Iran in the mountain canyon somewhere, it can hit Iran. It can hit Israel. So it's set up for a 1,500 kilo warhead, but it can also launch, supposedly, or that's what they're saying, 80 submunitions. And depending on where the submunition splits apart, number one, it makes it impossible for our interceptors because there's not one warhead to hit.
Right.
The warhead might be going after the dead booster that doesn't even matter. But you have 80 submunitions, and they dropped some of these, like on Tel Aviv last March. And people said, well, it's not really that combat effective because these are just like 30 kilo charges hitting randomly over a square kilometer. It sucks if it hits your car and you're in the car, but it's not going to take out Tel Aviv, right? But the message of that was that Ben Gurion Airport, where you got 50 of these tankers wingtip to wingtip in the open. Oh yeah. It almost seems like that weapon was designed for that, because if you have aircraft parked on concrete, because you can't drive them like Jeeps out onto the sand, right? They're limited to the aprons, so they're like sardines on all the concrete aprons. And if you have the ability to say, okay, it'll spread this much if we divide the submunition at this altitude, they can target that to take out the aircraft at Ben Gurion or these other airfields in Jordan and Israel. And I think that's where the real determinative battle is going to happen, because at a certain point, and we've already seen Iran go preemptive when they took out HIMARS that hadn't even fired yet in Kuwait. Like, they saw us setting up HIMARS, they took them out.
Wow. Okay.
No casualties by a miracle, supposedly. But if they're saying, oh, the B-2s are coming and we're flowing in all these aircraft, it's just going to be a target that the generals are going to say, if you don't hit that target, you're negligent. It's negligent incompetence.
Yeah,
to not
it's
hit.
right there.
And without our air tankers, we have no force projection.
Okay,
none.
So that's horrifying, everything you just said there, but I think completely accurate. But there's something you said earlier that I think is critical. I want to get Michael's response on it, which is, if the desalination plants are destroyed in the GCC nations, and by the way, that has been promised by Iran in retaliation for Trump's promise to take out their power plants, for example, and also the desalination plants in Iran. But if that happens, if the GCC region becomes uninhabitable, then the projections that I mentioned earlier, 400 million people at risk of famine, then those 400 million people die, or some equivalent number of people die in various countries that are marginalized in terms of food supply, because the fertilizer, the energy is never coming back online out of the Persian Gulf.
Never,
right? So then
it took 50 years to build it.
Yeah, exactly. So Michael, I mean, if that's the case, then all these paper traders that are trying to push oil down to $60 a barrel again, that's gone. Then oil's $200 a barrel for a decade or longer, isn't it?
I don't know what the price will be, but I think that my guess is they're going to take out the desalination plants. And I'm curious, too, what will happen to places like Mosul Dam up on near Mosul. I first wrote about that in 2005 or 6 in Mosul, because I spent about a year in that general area.
Yeah.
And, 2 years in Iraq. But a lot of that was in northern Iraq. But then also I'm curious what will happen with Aswan and things up the Nile, water infrastructure along the Nile.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because the Zionists clearly are going for Egypt. They're clearly genociding Lebanon, just like they've done to Gaza, and they're going to go for Jordan. That's why they're trying to, in my view, get Iran to attack Jordan, and they're going to go for a lot of Syria. They're going to go for at least up to Euphrates River in Iraq, which is, if you look at the old maps of the Basra, Baghdad to Berlin Railroad, it's right there. I mean, they're going up to that. That's a strategic area that dumps out by Basra into the Persian Gulf, right? There's 2 oil platforms there, Abot and Kayot. I think Abot, or one of them's closed now. I was on both of them, actually. I was on those oil platforms. I wrote about them in maybe 2006.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, those platforms, I think one may be closed now. But what I'm getting to is that's a strategic, you want to control that area of the, this is part of why I predicted last year that I thought Strait of Hormuz would be closed by the Zionists and blame Iran, because they're trying to they want to open that corridor. They want to take that part of Iraq. And if you're going to do that, what would I do? Would I secure Mosul Dam, or would I take it out? I would definitely address it. If you take it out, then you could destroy a lot of the Shia part of Iraq, right? Which is the part that's aligned with Iran, right? So I've been all up and down that river. That the Tigris, that Mosul Dam is on the Tigris, but I think something's going to end up happening to Mosul Dam, but who knows?
This is Michael. This is routes, resources, and the third ideology, which is much more transitory. Same, the different bears, new generation of bears fighting over the same streams and caves. How long have people been fighting over the Fertile Crescent? That is the key territory, between Macedonia and Persia, Iraq. There have been empires busted on that wheel for 5,000 years.
It is.
And they go back and they find there was another empire before that fighting over the same terrain.
It is. I've got a bunch of those old books, about the old canals, huge amounts of canals built between the Tigris and the Euphrates, and nobody even knows who built them. There's all kinds of stuff. That's how far back it goes. It's unbelievable. But I think that something will probably end up happening to Mosul Dam. I don't know if somebody will try to steal it, or, take it, secure it, or just destroy it somehow.
Well, my point, and I want Matt to address this, is that I don't think that very many Westerners are aware of how close we are to losing civilization as we know it. Like this is no longer just some regional war. This is about a civilizational reset. If we lose the Persian Gulf as an exporter of all these things that we've talked about, and if that is uninhabitable, which could also happen from radioactive fallout, right? Then the rest of the world has to recalibrate at a much lower industry, economic output, and population and agriculture. All of those things. I mean, our world actually goes backwards in a big way, doesn't it?
Yeah. No. Well, 2 points. I do feel like the three of us and many others, and I'm grateful that we have free speech on X because of Elon Musk buying it. Not that I'm like a fanboy in every category of him, but he's loosened things up because I nuked my Facebook account. I was banned every 30 days for 30 days. I nuked it.
Right.
And so any widening of free speech, like on YouTube, you couldn't even say COVID on YouTube. Your channel would be banned. Couldn't say the word. Vaccine, you're done. So I'm grateful for that we can express this and people can see on new media our ideas. And we're not the only three by far, obviously. But I don't think that most people get what we're warning about, which my comparison is the like a 2004 tsunami in the Indian Ocean. The geologists are saying get to higher ground, but they can't transmit it to the people. And the people are down at the beach just wondering, why did the tide just suddenly go out hundreds of yards?
Right.
And we're the ones that are saying, you have to get ready because this is happening. The event has already happened. That's the earthquake out there. That's this war. That's the event. It's already happened.
That's right. The event has already happened.
Yes.
You just haven't had the wave come over the horizon to your town yet, but it's coming. And the other point is, you don't get a chance if the elevator breaks at the 100th floor, or if the elevator breaks in 2026, you don't get to say, you know what? I think the 19th century is pretty cool. I see all those black and white cowboy movies. I can deal with that. Let's stop at 1870, and I'll have like a plow and a galvanized metal water pump and barbed wire, and it'll just be like no. If the elevator breaks in 2026, you might fall all the way to the basement. And Michael has even said the carrying capacity, there's like you can conceptualize a formula where you have to go through a cannibalism stage because there just are too many people and there's no food supply left. So at what point does the carrying capacity mean just the wild berries and the natural fruit and the game that has survived can support the new carrying capacity of the population? It may not be a question of, do we lose 400 million or do we lose 2 billion? Because you can crash all the way through the floor.
Yeah.
All the way down to a barbarism level.
That's right.
There's a volcano, I think it's like the year 548, something like that. There's great YouTube videos on it. It's called The Worst Year in History. And it aligns with like the whole four horsemen of the apocalypse, or the, how do you put it, Michael? Famine, war, famine, and
pandemic, famine,
disease.
and war.
Yeah, Panfa War.
Mm-hmm.
Pandemic, famine, war. And then somebody told you, and the fourth one is death. That's the four horsemen. So in this year, I think it's called 548, the worst year in history, a huge volcano happens. And in the Northern Hemisphere, and they can relate this to tree rings in China, Japan, Europe, so they know what happened, looking at it now. You had like a nuclear winter from a volcanic explosion. and it just rains. Europe and the world, the northern hemisphere is flooded. There's no crops for several years. Okay, that's problem number one. There's no food to eat, and everybody's cold and sick. And there's no food to eat. Your immune system is weakened, and you are more susceptible to disease because you're freezing cold, and you're all staying in hovels trying to be warm, spreading more diseases. Then you go through a warlord stage because the strongest people left form up as bandits to just take what they can take from the people that are trying to survive. So you go through a really brutal period. It's not like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington saves you at like, oh, let's just stop at 1970. You know, we went too far in 2026, but we're going to stop at 1970. Now, the floor falls out and the elevator goes right to the bottom.
Okay, well said. Kind of disturbing. Also, the most contaminated meat that you could eat on this planet would be other people. By the way, I say that as a food scientist. Like, there's no, you would rather eat rats than eat humans because of what humans have put in their bodies. By the just saying. But there's going to be a lot of cannibalism. You've talked about that extensively, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, that's the direction that things are going, and that's the thing. Notice that they've been nudging people towards the idea of cannibalism now in various ways, like for quite a while. Yeah. It pops up often now, if you've noticed that, right? In various ways.
And that movie, The Road, a few years ago was all about that.
Quite a lot, big and minor. But I do think, like what Matt said, I think our bases will be gone from the Middle East.
Yeah,
because
clearly.
as they leave different bases, like Bahrain, I saw Matthew mention yesterday talking about the headquarters that is gone from Bahrain now. I was actually in that headquarters. Secretary Gates picked me up in Afghanistan and flew me over to Bahrain in a C-17, and he took me into that. And Admiral Gortney, he was the man in charge of all the naval forces around there, and it's nice headquarters. And now apparently
it was used
gone.
for target practice.
Yeah, and now it's gone. We depended on nobody actually opposing us, right?
Right.
But hubris.
Yep, hubris.
All of our stuff is built above ground. Just put it on a parking lot. It's good enough.
Yeah, that's what you said yesterday. It's right. It's just big old radars out there, right there, ready to be blown up.
Well, and the reaction to the deaths of these soldiers in Jordan, U.S. service members, specifically this Latina girl, what is it, like 19 years old from Texas? They've been posting her pictures as if to say, how dare the enemy shoot back? Right. I don't mean to make light of people dying, but my God, if you join the U.S. military right now, you have joined a system that is systematically slaughtering civilians in other countries. Did you think that it was only a one-way shooting range?
And that you start a war with sneak attacks during negotiations.
Yeah. Right. You murder the negotiators.
See you on Monday in Geneva.
Yeah. And any day now, I expect to wake up and see that Diego Garcia has been taken off the playing field.
Clearly, that's a target.
There's so many targets with their, and of course, China and Russia are the larger the war is, the longer time it takes for it to form up. Like a big storm takes a lot longer to form up than a little, tiny tornado, right?
Right.
And that's what's happening now. It's taking a long time to build all this energy and collect it together. But that's what's happening. This is clearly growing.
Okay. We're not done yet. I want to give each of you, though, an opportunity to plug your channels, your websites, and then after that, I want to ask each of you where you think this is going for the rest of this calendar year, or even early 2027. But Matt, first, go ahead and share how people can follow your work.
Well, I have a Substack. I'm not very regular on Substack, and I don't have a paid Substack. Anything I put on Substack is just for the convenience of readers. So there's no paid, unpaid stuff I put there. It's all free. The main thing is I've been writing all these books for years and years and years, and lots more. I got a stack here.
Those are great books, by the way.
Amazon is so terrible for booksellers now. I practically have to pay Amazon to. But if you can get the book straight from me through my website, that's good. You know what I'll do? because a lot of people will see this show tomorrow. I can do a Kindle free run. I can put some of my books on Kindle for free for a couple days.
Okay, do that.
After people see this show. So it'll like start midnight tonight. You just can't do it right now. You can only do it for the next day. So I'll do a Kindle free run of my books. But what I think is really important now, because I agree with Yuri Bezmenov and Mr. Griffith. We're not going to unbrainwash the brainwashed. But what we can do is encourage a very, very smart field grade and senior officers in our armed forces and our intelligence agencies that do know better, that are watching these kind of conversations and they understand all that we're talking about, to say, maybe the best thing I can do is pull a Joe Kent. It's the honorable thing to do. I have some information, and it's not worth, the price of my soul is not worth a pension. That just riding this toboggan down the avalanche, I'm going to step off and pull a Joe Kent and do a press conference like Colonel David Hackworth did towards the end of the Vietnam War, a field commissioned officer in Korea, enlisted to lieutenant on the battlefield, youngest colonel in the Army, very innovative, in charge of developing new tactics. He took off his uniform and went on a TV show, and basically after that he was in exile for years. But we need some of that kind of courage, because otherwise I think that if we just have officers that are going to load 24 Marines onto Ospreys to fly to their doom on Karg Island, God help us.
Yeah.
And you can't blame the Marines for getting on the Osprey, but you can sure blame the colonel that said, I'm signing off on this, and we're going to send 800 in the first flight, and then 3 hours later another 800, because that's how they'd have to do it. And there'll be Iranians with man pads just shooting them down.
I want to come back to you, Matt, about the land invasion. But first, Michael, I want to give you an opportunity to tell our viewers how they can follow you.
Right. On the mass cast, that Joe Kent mentioned, I just asked him. He just answered. He's just said, "I fear there will be one." He didn't.
So he doesn't. He's not saying specifically what kind of event.
Right. He just said, but I'm not aware of one.
Okay. All right.
I was personally with Michael in Panama, and he would show me his texts from generals you see on television.
Oh yeah. Michael's very well connected.
I don't think I let you read any of those.
But you showed me right? You showed me I'm not making this up. Look.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Southcom stuff, the ridiculousness. Right.
Michael, you have a Substack.
Oh, Substack. If you go to Big Honey 6 on Substack, or Michael Yon, my name on Substack. In fact, I put up a video just before I came here saying I was coming on.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about, actually, I just went through some of my stored books here in Texas yesterday, and I pulled out about 30 books on cults and cannibalism, right?
Oh, wow.
Because, I tracked cannibals. I've told you that before.
That's right.
And I studied cults for more than 3 years. And I infiltrated a cult and lived with them and that sort of thing in California. But I tracked those cults around the world. I went around the world 6 times going to different cults. And, it took a while, 3.5 years. So this is a big deal. When it comes to all these wars that we talk about are about routes, resources, and ideology. But ideology is about human resources. And human resources are the number one resource. Because with human resources, you can get the other resources, right? So what's happening now is our enemies are attacking our human resources with, weaponized music, intoxicants, the whole world, and now cutting off food supply, right? And death jabs. So our human resources are being dumbed down and killed.
Right.
So you said that the information war is the highest form of warfare. That's
by far.
Michael Yanism.
Information war is up here and kinetics are down here somewhere.
Okay,
right?
So you're exactly right. And by the way, I've quoted you so many times about the 3 rules of war, of how they expand and so on. But about information war, let me ask you both this critical point. The information war, even against the American people, is causing them to not realize what's about to happen. Would you both agree with that?
Definitely.
Oh, okay. Totally.
So let me ask you first, Matt. at what point does the typical American realize, like, have an oh shit moment, that this is not, like, nothing's going back to 2025? What's that going to look like?
When they see supermarkets looted in big cities, and they begin to realize that there aren't enough National Guard to protect all the supply chain trucks, and things start to break down like that. You know, first there'll be gas lines, but when you see glitches in the EBT system, and then big supermarkets are just looted, Walmarts are looted, and then it dawns on people that they're not getting restocked.
I don't feel like we're very far from that.
That could happen quickly.
Yeah. Same question to you, Michael.
From seeing the tsunami on the horizon,
to
realizing, why did all the elephants already run up the mountain? I should have already left.
Yep.
Right. I think that then they'll realize something extremely bad is going on. But I think that the average person will actually never know actually what happened.
Really?
I think that, they'll know that maybe that they're dying and that the country's destroyed, but they won't understand actually what happened. I see that with the conversations I have with people. They don't really understand that this was a methodical takedown. There are the type of people that we generally associate with do understand on a much higher level than the average person does. For instance, that rancher that I was just on the flight with, and she was squared away. I had that feeling. She had that rancher sense that they have, but she didn't actually realize that this is a weapon that's used to take. I said, these are not about. This is not an accident that they made it back. This is about taking your ranch, taking our protein, and taking your life and mine. That's what this is about. This is not about, hey, the screwworms are back, the government's here to help. No. The government's the one that made the screwworms come back. So they can kill you. And
some of these people, as they're dying, they will say, trust the plan. You know, they will never know how foolish, how gullible they've been this entire time.
They won't know. There's still jab pushers out there. There's quite a lot, actually.
There are still plan trusters.
People wearing masks.
Yeah, people wearing masks. So I see that. The big takeaway from this, then let me ask you, Matt, and then we're going to wrap up this interview. But what is the number one thing that people watching this need to do or think, or a process they need to follow so that they can navigate this and survive it?
If going back to in tsunami terms, you can't just be standing there at the beach dumbfounded. You have to have some awareness, and not all tsunamis go. My brother was in the State Department when the 2004 tsunami hit, and he was sent to like Thailand and Sri Lanka and places. And he said it was one of the things that was so amazing compared to earthquakes and hurricanes. The tsunami would have like a belt of total destruction up to a certain level, and everything past that was completely normal. So, maybe you were on the train and everybody died on the train, but 100 yards further on, every house is untouched. So you can't be in the zone of destruction. We don't know how far up, elevation this goes in terms of like a percentage of, or like, will it only hit the big cities but not the small towns? Will the small towns provide you enough of a buffer socially, because you're not going to collapse into total anarchy? I think that getting away from big cities is important. And I obviously having food supplies, water supplies, super critical. I know people that have 10 fantastic guns and body armor and night vision, but they're on city water and they don't know where it comes from. I think that's, foolish. So but you don't know if you got to get up to 9,000 feet to survive or 5,000 feet, but don't be at sea level, right? Don't be right where for sure every disruption is going to take out the low fruit, the low population, even a small tsunami will take out. So I'd say get away from the big blue cities, any cities, and move to a place where they grow food in that zip code. Because there are a lot of ranches and farms that without fertilizer, they still could go, maybe they'll produce 20% of their former food, because they're not going to have the seedless GMO stuff. They're going to have to do it old school, and there'll be a real adjustment period. So maybe the same acreage will make 20% of the food. And they may even have to, like, for example, if there's no diesel, you'll take 100 refugees to be out there on the field like old school, like pre-Civil War, right? It did work. It fed the South. No diesel, no tractors. The South was a breadbasket with human labor. So it could come to that, but you have to be in a place where that might be possible, and that 20% output might be enough for that town. It won't be enough to feed the big city 200 miles away.
That's right, 100%. And I don't think that we can go back to food production without diesel, frankly. I mean, I know the skills used to exist, animals and humans, as you just said, Matt, but my God, the way down to that, the collapse.
The transition is going to be brutal, but you don't want to be in a big city when it happens.
Misako is working in the rice today.
Is she?
I mean, literally, and yesterday too. Literally. Didn't I see you the photos?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Wait, what? She's pregnant and working in a rice field?
That's
What's
why
going
she's
on?
doing
What?
it. She's doing it for exercise.
Yeah.
She's doing it for, she wants to be in, she's out there today. She got home yesterday tired, and she's like, I'm going right back. She's tough.
What do the kids say? Touch grass?
Touch grass.
That's touching grass.
Touching grass.
Yeah. And she loves doing it.
So you're gonna be a new dad soon.
I'm very super blessed. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Wow.
I've been making the classroom, and all the textbooks that I bought have been from the 1890s. Or I mean, from the 1800s. I'm trying to get them before 1890.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
so you're going to give your kid the most amazing homeschool education in the world,
brother. I mean, I've got we're going to go right into real geometry, right? Conical cross sections with real cones and
You're like 2 years old. They can name every country on the globe.
Oh, I call it the globe game with my nieces. I would like, go find Kenya. Who can do it the fastest?
Oh man.
And but. Yeah, speaking of tsunamis and survival, though, in Japan they have something called tsunami stones, and because the Japanese know that generally you just forget things after 3 generations. 3 generations, it's kind of washed out, right? Right. And so they put these tsunami stones, and I was just over at one actually, just a couple weeks ago, and they put these stones up. Because if you build on that side of the stone, you die. On this side, you're safe.
Like what Matt was just saying.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was reminded.
The tsunami comes to here.
Yep. And the people that died at Fukushima, they had built on the other side of the stone.
Uh-huh.
And some of the Japanese I've asked about tsunami stones, some of them don't even remember the tsunami stones exist.
Oh, wow.
Right. So
that's why they're there, to remind you.
Yeah. Yeah. Other Japanese know. They're like, oh, yeah, there's one over here and that sort of stuff. But many Japanese have forgotten that even tsunami stones. But 3 generations, the first time I read about the 3 generation thing, I think it was in Scientific American in the 1990s. And they were talking about how drugs like cocaine and the opium, morphine, and heroin was big in the United States in the 1800s. Actually, huge.
Yeah.
And
Coca-Cola,
then,
man.
Because at first they're like, and Vin Mariani and all that stuff. Yeah. So at first, everybody's like, hey, this is the ultimate mood lifter, and all kinds of things. And then they realize, hey, this is destroying entire families. This is destroying entire communities. So then they went, really against it. But that Scientific American article, I remember, what was the name of it? It was from the 1990, maybe 1992-ish. Anyway, I was out of the Army. I was in that time frame. And so they were talking about how you will then recycle and forget it and go back to the cocaine, or whatever. That's that 3 generation thing.
In economics, there's a Russian economist from like before the Great Depression. I think it's Kondratiev. That's Kondratiev wave. The oldest guy in your firm, in your financial firm, he retires, and the young guys are back to, we could make a lot more money if we leveraged this.
Right.
And there you go.
But let me share something with both of you about Taiwan, because I lived in Taiwan, and I speak a fair amount of Chinese, as you know. And
you translated for me when I was in Darien.
Yeah, I did. I was talking to the Chinese border crossers there to find out where they're going. But I study Chinese every time that I'm out jogging. I'm constantly learning more Chinese because I think it's really important to be able to speak Chinese right now. And also, I don't want to forget the language, but when I lived in Taiwan, I don't think I've ever told you this, Matt. When I lived in Taiwan, I used to talk to a lot of the old timers there. And they told me that Japanese occupation of Taiwan, World War II, was actually also a technology transfer. So the Japanese culture taught the Taiwanese how to build furniture, how to run lumber mills, how to do high output food production with Japanese food production techniques, and so much more. And then decades later, that became a lot of the foundation, along with, Chinese innovation and dedication and hard work, but, Japanese influence. That became then the Taiwan manufacturing, which was known for a long time as being much higher quality than mainland China.
I was about to say quality.
Right,
quality.
Right. But then
That's
what happened?
Pure Japanese.
Right. I mean, Taiwan didn't have the same quality as Japan, but Taiwan kept getting higher and higher quality to the point where then the Taiwan, and this happened in the last 30 years, the Taiwan businesses then needed cheaper labor, so they transferred the technology to China. So that then China's running the factories that were often run by Taiwanese managers who would go to China, run the factories, do the quality control. But if you go back far enough, a lot of that tech came from Japan.
Right.
So
the ethos.
Right, the ethos.
And
right.
Taiwanese and Japanese, they seem to love each other. I
yes,
love
they
Taiwan.
They do.
And I went there to an old veterans thing with Misako actually last year, and she goes every year. And they were taking us around to all the temples and memorials. I was the only white guy there. I got invited because I'm married to Misako. That's the only reason.
Right. But that's a great benefit too. You get invited to all the Japanese stuff. Yeah.
I love Taiwan. But China is going to go for it. And the Japanese and the Taiwanese are that close. They're a very close relationship.
Yeah. But as you know, there's a very strong movement in Taiwan now to just join mainland China, because they're watching the U.S. cannot defend its allies anywhere else in the world.
Especially like Kinmen Island. We went to Kinmen.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah. You can swim from Kinmen to mainland China.
Yeah.
That's why they outlawed like soccer balls and inner tubes for a while. Because, seriously.
Yeah, it's very close.
And so we went to Kinmen and stayed, I don't know, maybe 10 days or so. And, Kinmen's right there. And actually, I was talking with people in the Taiwanese government. At one point, this is a very serious guy. I was in his office, and he's like, "We should just give them Kinmen," because they're so. He said they're not really Taiwanese like us. Kinmen. A lot of people think Taiwan is one island, but it's really Kinmen's very far away from sort of mainland Taiwan.
Right.
And
that's the island they pronounce it Jinmen, right?
Right. That's right.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I thought. Yeah.
I say Kinmen, so if you look it up on the map,
because it's spelled with a K in English. Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't the Quemoy and Matsu, weren't they like a thing back in the day? The islands that are very close to China?
I don't know.
Weren't they what?
The Quemoy and Matsu, they were islands that were like visual distance to China.
That's more north, the other island, yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, the people out there were quite pleasant and nice. I liked them quite a lot, but you can tell they want to go mainland. And we could watch them building the airport in mainland China. We could see it without binoculars.
Right.
It was like, there it is at nighttime, all the lights, they're building it, right?
My point in all this is that history that I laid out has ultimately resulted in China today now being the world's most capable manufacturer in so many areas: robotics, drones, EVs, battery technology. I mean, all the battery chemistry, the best battery chemistry is coming out of China, no question about it. And that, there's a whole history to that, but China dominates that now, and the U.S. can't even pretend.
There are so many parallels to the fall of the British Empire and the.
Yep.
Britain used to be known for quality automobiles and electronics, if you can imagine. B&G, broken gauges. But there was a period when British textiles and the British industry was and they could pass the torch to the United States, but there's no new United States for us to pass the torch to.
Right.
The torch is going to be going to China no matter what anybody wants. And, they'll have Russia, they'll have the Russian mineral and all the other wealth, resource wealth, and their know-how and technology. And I don't see how we compete with that long run. I feel like we're Britain in the 1950s, still trying to be a player, but fading.
I'm surprised Britain still makes high quality cars. And I say that because if you look out in your parking lot, there's a Bentley there. My friend, whose name we won't mention, drove me in a Bentley.
Oh, yeah. Well, but we don't see
I've never been in a Bentley except Michael Jackson's when it was parked. But it's very high quality. So that was surprising to me. I'm like, the British still make some high quality stuff.
Yeah. But also, if you look in our parking lot, I don't know if you know this, but 4 of my employees have bought Teslas. Those batteries all come out of China. So it's like there's actually Chinese tech.
And the Russians are still making BMWs and Mercedes in Russia. When this all happened, they just said, "Okay, we'll take your logo off and put our logo on." We know how to make them now. I
can only imagine how many drones that China is making right now and deploying around the world. Places like Bermuda, not Bermuda, but Bahamas, where they have a big port right off the coast of Florida. Right? I mean, there's so many places that they can, or just on ships and launch them from the ships. There's so many ways. I mean, they could be making so many drones. I don't even know where to start. I mean, they've got those dark factories where things are just all automated and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Taiwan and Japan have to realize the U.S. Navy cannot save them now.
100%.
No chance.
100%. That's clear.
China is clearly going for Japan, by the way. Really? I know Doug McGregor disagrees. He messaged me the other day. He's like, you're wrong or whatever. I'm like, you're wrong, Doug. I've been all over China researching this. I wrote 3 books on it that are only in Japanese. I wrote them in English, but they're only in Japanese. And I was looking at what China's doing to get ready to go to war with Japan. Those 3 books are about that, right? And a lot of what I've written in those books have already come true, like the lawsuit between Korea and I won't go into it. But anyway, but the point is they're clearly going for Japan. And every war that I've ever studied, they always radiate information in advance. They radiate.
Yes.
If you just go out into the sunshine of that information war, you can see which ways their eyes are looking and their toes are pointed, right? They're clearly making a hate campaign against Japan.
Right. Okay, one more question that's related to all this for both of you. And thank you, Matt, for taking the time, and thank you, Michael, for being here. You may have seen some of my tweets on this, but the White House is preparing to ban Chinese open source AI models from the U.S., which would, I call this make America dumb again, because then we would be forced to use the less effective domestic models that are all censored and banned and nerfed, as they say. So U.S. corporation, nerfed means it's been dumbed down so that it won't answer questions about bacteria or cybersecurity or CRISPR gene editing or anything like that, right? That's nerfed in the AI world. So
not a hard ball, a softball.
So every answer starts with Israel is your friend, and
all vaccines are good for you and whatever. But
safe and effective.
Think about it, Matt. Think about the loss of competitiveness of U.S. corporations. If we in America, if we all have to use Trump-approved AI models that are dumbed down to the U.S. standards, whereas the rest of the world, including Brazil and Iran and Pakistan, they can use for free the Chinese models that are actually performing better, and they're mostly uncensored. I mean, is this some kind of economic suicide plan for it? What do you think, Matt?
We've seen plenty of countries going back to Britain. They committed economic suicide after World War II. They went full welfare state. The dole became for infinity. They brought in beginning with Caribbean blacks. They went on a very self-destructive path. So plenty of empires have not only failed overseas. We clearly are getting run out of West Asia, the Middle East. That's happening. Our bases are being pushed back to Jordan and Israel. And Will Shriver, I follow on X. I'm a Tetronic. He says, after you go to Israel, then where? It's like the Mediterranean. It's back to Georgia. After Israel, you're back to Kansas. So we're clearly getting pushed out of there. And at home, we're following this British path of dumbing. Our education is pathetic. Our workforce is not competitive. And if we're not going to use the best AI, then we're just hamstringing ourselves intellectually.
The Israelis, by the way, are squirting out all over the place, like the Philippines and Thailand, and we should talk about that, and Panama, Argentina, and eventually I think they're going to take Romania, and I have reason to say that. But I mean, they're going for different places. I say
Sure.
take it. I mean, they're clearly going to move.
Well, they have
big
influence,
numbers
but
in
they don't
Romania.
have numbers. And, there can be, what do they call it, an eutectic moment? It's like a diode flipping. What a gas turns to liquid or liquid turns frozen.
Phase
You can
change.
get to a point where all of a sudden that tribe is persona non grata around the world. Like it's suddenly a realization dawns. Like,
No, there
why
has
do
been a
these
phase
people
change
in?
already. That's clear. Like the Thais are ready to kick them out, and so I mean that phase change has occurred in some places.
That's true. We've seen that. All right. Well, gentlemen, I'm going to wrap it up here. We've spent a lot of time, and I want to thank you, Matt, for your time, and thank you, Michael. I'm going to give Michael a tour of my mass spec lab next here, by the way. And Matt, if you ever come to Texas, I'd love to give you a tour as well. You're always welcome here.
I will, and you actually have enough helium to go for a little while.
That is sweet. I'm going to show Michael the helium
You
tanks
cornered the helium.
that we nabbed in March. Yeah, we have a year's supply of helium here.
Where'd you get helium for?
We just asked for it before anybody else realized what was going on.
Oh, so you just bought it? So you
Bought it
as an
because we use it in the lab.
Oh, right.
We use this like 4 milliliters a minute of helium.
So
that
we can
goes
do
into the
Mickey
mass spec.
Mouse talk.
Well,
now.
but we can't waste it, man. We got to use it for the lab.
Every breath costs $50.
I just figure like I'm afraid that Trump is going to invoke the NDAA and come confiscate my helium.
Oh Lord!
Because it's like it's. I mean, other labs are out, and our supplier declared force majeure.
Wow.
Just spray paint it and paint acetylene over it.
Yeah,
There you
that's
go.
a great idea,
There you
Matt.
go.
I will have to do that.
Danger, acetylene.
Perfect plan. All right. Well, Matt, thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all your great
Thank you.
graphics and all your tweets and everything. So I appreciate your time, and I hope people follow you.
Thank you for getting Michael and me back together, because since he's been traveling, we haven't been able to connect on any of these podcasts.
I'm always waiting for the next
weeks.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm always waiting for the next Bracken map. What's he going to come up with next? And every time you come out with these Bracken maps, I share them around to everybody.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
No, but I'm happy to have all three of us together. And Matt, one thing that you can't see, but I can see because I'm here in studio, Michael Yan is wearing like ninja boots.
I'll hold him up and show you.
He's got like Japanese ninja boots, man. Check this out. Look.
There you go. Can you see it? Or
Angle it a little different. Let's see. We can't see the toes.
Oh, there we go.
There, angle. Yeah, there we go. See, look at that. Ninja toes, man. He's going full Japanese ninja.
Misako's going to love this. I'm going to send it to her. She's got a pair too.
Really?
And my socks, yeah.
Man,
So you can sneak across the rooftops.
Yeah.
it's like you're fully authentic, man.
These are comfortable.
You're gonna
I wore
break out
these
the
to the
ninja
Red
boots.
Pill Expo. People are looking at my feet like, what are you wearing?
That's great, man. All right. Well, thank you, Matt. Have a great
Thank
rest
you.
of your day. Thank you, Michael. Tour's coming up next. So, and for all of you watching, remember to follow both of these men on their Substacks and their X handles. Hey, Matt, what's your X handle?
It's Matt_Bracken 48. I decided to freeze my age at 48.
Okay, 48 it is. And Michael, just Michael_Yan, right?
Oh, yeah. On X, Michael_Yan, or just look for Big Honey.
Okay.
Big
Or
Honey.
Big Honey. Okay.
There's only one Big Honey.
And you can follow more of my videos and interviews at brightvideos.com. And thank you for watching today. Take care, everybody.
Stock up on the long-term storable Ranger Bucket Set. 536 servings of clean organic superfoods for your survival pantry. Certified organic and lab tested for purity. Order now at healthrangerstore.com.